Assisting passengers with disabilities in emergency situation training. Americans with Disabilities Act and the Civil Rights. Civil rights protection is for over 50 million Americans. ADA is a civil rights law that was passed by Congress in 1990. Prior to ADA, inaccessible public transit created barriers to active, productive lives for over 43 million Americans with disabilities. Individuals with disabilities were excluded from the workplace, schools, and participating as contributing members of their communities. ADA gave individuals with disabilities the same opportunities as others. ADA's definition of a person with a disability includes individuals with physical or mental impairments that substantially limit one or more major life activity. Individuals with a record of such impairment, or individuals regarded as having an impairment. It addresses transportation provided by both private and public held entities. Under the ADA law, there are certain training requirements that are outlined. They include that vehicle operators must be trained to function vehicles and equipment safely, provide the required level of service, and treat passengers with disabilities in a respectful and courteous way. It also outlines that drivers must be able to announce stops upon request, permit service animals to accompany the passengers, permit passengers to travel with life support such as oxygen, make appropriate use of accessibility-related equipment, and provide adequate time to both board and disembark the vehicle. Under the ADA law, it also outlines several things that a driver may not do. That includes discriminate, deny service if the passenger is capable of using it, require use of designated priority seats, impose special charges based on disability, gender, religion, national origin, race, or age. Drivers may not require an attendant or refuse service solely because the passenger's disability results in behavior that may offend, annoy, or inconvenience. Take note, though, that it's not considered discrimination to refuse service if the passenger is engaging in violent, seriously disruptive, or illegal conduct. Now, when assisting passengers, we want to make sure that we're only in contact or touch the members in scenarios that may be considered appropriate or necessary. Now here we've listed 4 things or 4 scenarios that may be considered appropriate or necessary. They include assistance into and out of the vehicle, helping a member into a seat, then securing their seatbelt or restraint, and of course rendering first aid. Now, in this example here, you'll see the driver over on the left-hand side is assisting the member into the van. Now, a couple things you need to remember before you actually touch the member, whether it's in the 4 scenarios we spoke of before or as we see here in this picture. The first thing we want to do is we want to ask permission. May I assist you? The second is ask how or where you may assist them. Now, looking at this picture, we see that the driver on the right is assisting the member by supporting the member's right arm as they head up into the vehicle. Now, if this member were going on the transport today so they could have their arm or shoulder looked at, the driver wouldn't want to just grab the arm and try to help them up into the vehicle. So again, it's very important that we ask permission first, and then ask how or why or how or where we can support them so we don't injure them. Also, when you are providing assistance, it's very important to communicate with the members. Especially put yourself in the member's position. Let's say they're in a wheelchair or a mobility device and they're gaining access to the vehicle today by using that lift or ramp. So as you put them on the lift and begin to raise it, again, you want to walk them through every step of the way. That way they're not surprised as the lift starts to raise or lower, etc. Of course, prior to allowing the vehicle to proceed, put it in drive, you want to make sure that everyone is secured, whether they're in a wheelchair, mobility device, a stretcher. You also want to make sure that everyone is restrained or properly seat belted. Once you're at the location, you want to offer your assistance again as they exit the vehicle. If they need further assistance into the destination, whether it's a facility or a hospital, you want to go ahead and offer that as well. A few things to note. We cannot deny service based on the difficulty of securing whether it's a wheelchair or mobility device. So just because someone's wheelchair is a little harder to secure using that 4.4 securement system, that isn't a legitimate reason to deny service. Something else I want to point out is permitting standees to use the lift. So let's say we go to pick up Mrs. Smith today, and she is not in a wheelchair, she's got a walker, and she sees as you come to pick her up that you've got that lift van. If she requests to gain access to your vehicle by using the lift as opposed to stepping up into the van, you must allow her to do this. We must let her gain access to the vehicle by way of that lift. When using the lift, you want to make sure that all, whether it's a mobility device or a wheelchair, before you start to raise that lift, you want to make sure that that mobility device fits in the envelope of securement for that lift. You also want to make sure that you, as the driver or attendant, you're the only ones who are operating the lift or the ramp. Although, let's say you're transporting a child, mom, dad, or guardian, or, someone who's traveling with a member, may have great intentions and be well-meaning, but because they haven't been trained on the safety of that lift or ramp, they should never be permitted to operate it. Let's jump back really quickly here to our story of Mrs. Smith, who gained access to the vehicle by the lift. She's got her walker. Now she's in the vehicle. She's sitting down. She's ready to be transported. She's got her seatbelt on. You want to store her mobility aid. In this case, it's her walker. Not just store, but you also want to make sure that you secure it. So let's think, as you're driving along, the car in front of you stops suddenly. If that walker is just sitting in the back, it's not secured, that could fly forward, it could hit Mrs. Smith, it could hit another member, it could hit you, and of course we don't want that to happen to anyone. We wouldn't want that walker or other mobility aid to hit anyone. So again, we want to make sure that we store and secure all mobility aids, or maybe a wheelchair if a member is transferring during those transports. All right. Now, as I mentioned before, all wheelchairs, mobility devices should be secured within the vehicle using that 4-point floor securement system, and each location with those securement systems must have a 3-point passenger restraint system in place. You'll see that illustrated here on the right hand side in our picture. We've got 1 down across the shoulder, 2-point across the lap, and down is your 3rd point. All right, now from time to time you may transport someone and they opt to transfer from their wheelchair and into the vehicle seat for the actual transport part. Of course, we can recommend this, but we can never require that someone transfers. We want to make sure if someone does request a transfer that we're offering them assistance as they transfer, and then of course we store and secure that wheelchair for them. All companies for each vehicle with a lift or ramp should have a regular maintenance program in place. You want to make sure that you, as your driver or you're an attendant, you're reporting any non-operating lifts just as quickly as possible. It is each company's responsibility to make every effort to get that lift repaired before the next day of service. Right, emergency situations. Now, should emergency, whether it's an incident or an accident, occur, keep in mind that it's quite natural for members to look to you, whether you're the driver or an attendant of the vehicle, as leadership role. So because of that, you want to make sure that the first thing you do is you want to remain calm. The second thing is you want to see what you can do to protect yourself, the passengers, and of course the vehicle. You want to determine what has happened and what actions or inactions even will protect the safety of the people and the property around you. Of course, it's ideal for MTM if you report these immediately, but it's important that you are reporting these just as quickly as it's safe to do so. You want to report that up through your dispatch or your supervisor, and they'll report it back to MTM. And of course, you always want to make sure that you're reporting or contacting emergency services such as 911 as needed and for immediate assistance. We want to make sure that we're documenting the situation. You're documenting it on MTM's incident and accident form. And as you turn this in, you also want to make sure that you include that police report. All right, now we've got an example here of our incident and accident form, and I realize that it is quite small. I don't expect you to read it on the screen. However, what I want to illustrate here is that we are asking for quite a bit of information and quite a bit of detail. So as you're going through this, just remember as you're writing your summary and your details here about what happened, you want to make sure that you include every little bit of detail that you can. That concludes our session today. Thank you so much for your participation.